Do you guys want to just play something real, mellow? There's some background music here. I'm going to kind of throw it back to the beat poet kind of days. Once upon a time, the United States of America dropped a bad guy into the ocean blue, and everyone lived happily ever after. The end.
Yeah. Encore.
I like to imagine that Joe Arpaio will choke on a hot dog somewhere in some shithole in the middle of the desert. A place where he harassed people and no one speaks any English. He'll clutch at his throat, his eyes will bug out, and he'll make those guttural sounds while turning beet red. And no one will lift a finger to help him while he convulses and chokes on the floor like that. A small boy will walk over and throw a tepid glass of water on him and be scolded for it. And he will die like that on the floor, wet, surrounded by those he hates, with all of his heart, and with a giant piece of half-chewed pork wedged in his throat. Fitting death for a pig. This is titled A Poem About Gated Communities and the Children That Walk Through Them in America. I watched a white child march down the street. He is silent but not cautious, donning full camo gear and a black plastic machine gun with an orange tip for safety, that he occasionally points at passers-by or cars, houses, rat-a-tat-tat, pop-pop, bang, you're dead. And all I can think of is, God damn, they start wanting war earlier every year. And then, as the sun passes behind the clouds on this Sunday morning where I have not yet read of the latest brown child to be murdered in the streets, I think of Trayvon Martin, walking through a similar Florida neighborhood, armed with only small pieces of candy, sweet tea, and his skin color. And all I can think of is, God damn, they killed him younger every year. And I close my window shade, slump back down into my comfortable chair where I can hear the sounds of children playing war until the night comes bringing with it more death. Last piece. This is called Pissing Contest. It's interesting, fascinating on how some days when the French fries are just right, and maybe you've asked the kid behind the counter to hold the pickles, the collective fast food nation that is we of the sitcom republic, host to the Super Bowl of politricks and politics, we will celebrate a person's death one day and then abhor it the next. Context matters, of course. But we seem to be collectively schizophrenic about dying, death, and the dead, and urinating on the dead, because we expect more of our brainwashed high school kids who murder people for paychecks and commercialized glory. Is it real or is it Memorex? Do we cheer a guy's body being dragged through the streets and then boo when they pee on him? When just yesterday we called for an end to the death penalty? Not the same thing, you say. That guy deserved it, you say, but not this guy. Okay. Headshots and glamour shots, they all make the news. The dirty laundry, if it bleeds, it leads. Is it a question of he, she deserved it, or a question of execution is wrong in all cases? Different names, different places, different expressions on their faces. I honestly don't think anyone knows anymore, but urinating on the dead is bad. Got it. Note to self, kill them. Okay to kill them, maim them, torture them, detain them. Just don't piss on them. And for God's sake, don't pose with the dead after you've killed and pissed on them. It'll be old news next week anyway, and we will still be spinning it, justifying it, condemning it, forgetting it, and pissing on it. These are all chess moves anyway, and it's your move. And please, try to hit the target. Thank you very much. I want to introduce to you a local legend, a local hero, an activist, an author, international all-star, Luis J. Rodriguez, who has been gracious enough to join us tonight with his presence. So let's give him a very warm welcome.
Pleasure to be here. I hope that we understand that poetry is power, words are power, our stories are power. So I'm going to share a few things, but before I do, I just want to let you know really quickly, if you're interested, about VID00018 Press. I have been doing this press for 25 years, and people need to know that it's there. It's an LA press. We do sell our books out of the San Fernando VID00018 Center Cultural Island bookstore. I just wanted to show you the beautiful covers that we do. We ain't playing. These are real good, beautiful books, beautiful poetry in between beautiful covers. Our designer's been with me for 25 years, Jane Burnett. She's part Native American, and she's been a great friend all these years because now she doesn't design for anybody except for us. So I want you to know that because a lot of people don't know that I have a press. It's really funny how there's like a fractured mirror. You know, people know I'm a poet, people think I'm a novelist, people think I do gang memoirs, and they never think there's the same guy. I'm also a publisher, and I'm also a bookstore guy. Yeah. So I'm going to just read you a few things, and I'm going to start with a poem about the first poetry reading I ever went to. How many people here, this is your first poetry reading? You guys are old. Old hats, okay. So pretend when you had your first poetry reading. I want to read you a poem about the first one. I was 18 years old. It was in Berkeley, California. I'd never been to a poetry reading in my life. And this is one of these things where, I don't know if poetry does that to you, but maybe other things, when you finally get exposed to something that really speaks to you. I'm saying to your bones. That's what happened when I heard these poems, these poets. I didn't know I was going to end up being a poet, but my destiny was already calling me. And just so you know, I was heavy on drugs. I was in a gang. But sometimes it takes something like that to begin to waking you up to your own purpose. And this is the poem. It's called Fevered Shapes. It is dedicated to the three best performance poets of the time. This is 1973. There's a reason why I got all this gray hair and getting old. But it was to Jose Montoya, if people don't know, the godfather of Chicano poetry. David Henderson, who was one of the leading African-American poets at the time. And my personal good friend, Pedro Pietri, the New York poet, who passed on not too long ago. I wallowed in a needle-spawned world, addicted to dope and the crazy life, and yet there I was in Berkeley for my first poetry reading. I was 18 with a bullet, as they say. Earlier, I had flown on the plane for the first time. Sure, I've survived half a dozen gun assaults, cops knocking me around, ODs, blades to my neck in jail cells, homeless and dank streets and beatdowns and barrio brawls. But flying, that scared me to death. I sat there in a crowded cafe, not knowing what to expect. Poetry? I never heard this before. Oh, I had written lines, vignettes, images, fears, thoughts. I didn't know they were poems. I had no idea what a poem was. First up on the mic was Jose Montoya, with Chicano prayers of old pachucos and strained loves and guitar solos and Indian hands and cornflower. Then David Henderson took the stage, gleaning urban black streets, racist stares, Black Panther fury, and Southern cooking. Finally, Pedro Pietri came up, New Rican wordmeister, flashing at varios experiences with poems located in phone booths and real-life wisdoms that made us laugh and shake our heads. I had never heard words spoken this way, more music than talk, more fevered shapes than sentences, more Che and Malcolm than Shakespeare. These poems came for me, lacered my throat, demanded my life savings, taking me for a sunset ride. These poems were graffiti scrawls along the alleys and trash-strewn tunnels of my body, the metaphoric methadone for the heroin hurling through my bloodstream, the lifeline I already had inside and didn't know. These poems were pool sticks, darkened gangways, a swirl of sunrise after the graveyard shift, a blood-black yelling behind torn curtains, a child screaming, and nobody coming to help. They were a woman sent after a night of lovemaking, a sweet touch of hand to face, cascades of hair on a pillow, and moan during an elongated kiss. These poems were shadowed intent, startled doubts, sorrows without grief, the moon without sky, unknown melodies, the falling inside that happens when you push razor onto wrist. They came for me as I sank into my suicide, while fidgeting in a chair, inching under the skin, as I wondered why I even came. Jose, David, and Pedro, I was never the same after this. They came for me, and I've never let go. They came for me, and I've perspired poems ever since. They came for me and all my dictions, my lies, my falling masks, my pissed-off wives, neglected children, angry friends, and back-to-back failures could never, ever take them away. So I'm going to read you one of my older poems. I did a lot of work in the homeless community here doing poetry. And we would go to the street, Skid Row, and there was a few bars that you go in there. And this is many years ago in the 80s, and there was one bar, I think it was called, you guys might remember, Main Street. Main Street's changed so much. But there used to be the El Paso Cafe. It used to be an open bar. And so I would go in there, we would do poetry with homeless people. It was pretty good. The interesting thing is I met this one guy. You know how it is at Skid Row? It's really funny. You have most of the homeless are African American, and then you have sections of undocumented, but they hardly ever hang together. Like you're all homeless, but you're all split up. And then there was even Indian Alley for the Native Americans. It used to be Indian Alley on Wilton, right off Wilton. So I know all these places, and I'm like, how come even we're all homeless, we're all in the same boat, and we're still split up? Anyway, that's what happened. So what happened, though, is I met one dude from Mexico who told me he was a poet from Mexico. And he actually got up and read some poetry. He's pretty good in Spanish. And he had this funny story that I thought was, really great. He says that he always wondered who this guy Jesus Sabes was. Because everywhere he looked, there was a Jesus Sabes everywhere. Jesus saves. So I decided to do this poem in his voice, kind of like pretending I'm him. And it goes like this. It's called Jesus Saves or Jesus Sabes. This dude, Jesus Sabes, must be popular or something. You see his name everywhere. I first saw it when I woke up from a Bunker Hill cardboard box to a huge sign near the top of the LA Library. It read Jesus Sabes. I wish I were that guy. Then I wouldn't be this chalk-faced pirate on city seas. Then I wouldn't be the starved acrobat of the alcoves loitering against splintered doors. Then I wouldn't be this apparition who once had a home made of stone even and a woman to call wife. In the old country, I worked since I was 7. I knew the meaning of the sun's behest for poors to weep. But now such toil is allowed to rot like too many berries on a bush. In the old country, I laughed the loudest, made the most incisive remarks, and held at bay even the most limpid of gatherings. But here, I am a grieving poet, a scavenger of useless literature. They mean nothing in this place. My metaphoric manner, the spectacle of my viscous views, verse, nothing. I am but a shadow on a sidewalk, a spot of soot on a block wall, a roll of dice across a collapsing hallway in a downtown single-room welfare hotel. Okay, Senor Sabes, right now, this is your time. But someday a billboard will proclaim my existence. Someday people will sigh my name as if it were confection on the lips. As long as I have a rhythm on my breast, there will come this fine day when this orphan, pregnant with genius, is discovered sprouting epiphanies like wings on the doorstep of mother civilization. I want to end maybe in another light note. I don't know why. Maybe Santino got me going that way. And this poem is about, let me see if we can find it. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I have had cockroaches with me for decades. So I decided to write this poem. And by the way, I do have some, just so you know, I'm signing the memoir, Always Running, but also the new one, which I really recommend. It's 40 years after Always Running. It it came out about a year and a half ago. It calls you back, and honestly, through love, addiction, revolutions, and healing. And so hopefully you'll get that. But let me read this one, and then we'll move on. This poem is called "The Cockroaches I Married." My cockroaches have been with me like forever. Several generations of roach families have graced my cupboards and bookshelves for 30 years. They are likely related to the critters I encountered when I first married. Although my wife and I eventually broke up, these cockroaches continue to haunt my socks drawer and toaster. Over the years, regardless of where I lived, I've carried these roaches in boxes, magazines, clothes, and electrical appliances. They nestled in the crumpled creases of the darkest recesses. I trust it was them the darn things do look like. Besides, every landlord I knew claimed no roaches existed in their places until I showed up. Over time, I've tried everything to get rid of the damn pests. Bug sprays, cucumber slices laid out in various corners, roach motels, and Chinese anti-roach chalk. But somehow, a few managed to survive and stole away in my possessions until I arrived at my next abode. If I paid attention, I could have given these creatures their own names. Le Rocher, Cucaracha, or Lord Buckingham. They may end up as lifelong partners. They have outlasted my wives, cars, and jobs. But over the years, I've accumulated some horror stories. Like when my kids were babies, I turned on the lights and watched cockroaches scurry across their small faces. And I recall opening cereal boxes from where the creatures scrutinized me through bent antennas and beady eyes, or drinking coffee with roach pieces floating on top. Despite this, we lived for a long time in a kind of human-insect detente. Whereas I once took morbid pleasure in crushing their hideous brown-winged bodies, I soon allowed them to meander by without crashing down on them with my fists. One morning, though, the Cold War escalated to a fighting war. My teenage son woke up the household with blood yells down the hall. As he held his head in a tortured expression, he cried out about the pain. I drove him to a hospital where a doctor, who looked like he had been through much cockroach combat, took out a tiny vacuum cleaner, stuck it gently into my son's ear, and sucked out a particularly gruesome mother. That did it. I had reached my limits. I brought in the heavy artillery, man. An exterminator arrived with the latest pest control technology, including enzymes that stopped a roach's outer shell from growing. They were crushed by their own bodies. What a way to go. And I know, in the end, they'll win. But the fight, I tell you, the fight's the thing. Nowadays, I may spot a lone roach warrior, but I've carried out the equivalent of chemical warfare and economic sanctions. It's me or the roaches, man. And as far as I'm concerned, this partnership is over. Punto y sas.
We're going to keep things rolling. We have with us tonight another icon of the community here. You know him from La Cucaracha, the cartoon, the Pocho Hour of Power, Pocho.com. He is the one and only Lalo Alcaraz. He was going to say a few words.
Hey, Luis, thanks for the setup, man. That was beautiful. I'm going to file a report with the Cucaracha Rights Commission, though. But I am your lone roach warrior. Thank you. My name is Lalo. I'm a cartoonist and occasionally humorous. Not tonight. Yeah, I'm part-time. I'm going to park your cars tonight. Oh, you're already here. I guess I got here late. But I guess we were talking about. It actually came up online. I think I was having a flashback. Everything seemed to be the '90s all over again, and I think it was. It's not the fashions. It's it's kind of the mentality And I don't know, what was the thing that set me off when we were talking about that? Was it the censorship kind of from other Chicanos, or I forget what?
It's a mixture of everything. The politics, the immigration.
It's like we're going backwards a step. And I mean, for me, it started last year in 2012 with the whole self-deportation thing. And I'll recap that real fast, but back in, way back in the presidential campaign recently, Mitt Romney brought up the Republicans' only immigration policy, which was self-deportation, right? And so people started sending me that and saying, "Don't you think that's ridiculous?" I said, "Yes, that's why I created that." And then I found a website, or somebody sent me a link, like about maybe some 20-something Latina student somewhere sent me a link to a website for a group called the Yes Men, which is a group of like hoaxsters and stuff. They kind of do what I do, a lot of political hoaxing and things like that, and satire. But they have better grant writers than I do, apparently. But they put up a webpage, or associates of them, saying, we created self-deportation, and Mitt Romney is now using it in his presidential campaign. And I said, brakes, you are not going to take credit for something which I created along with Esteban Zul of Pocho Magazine back in 1994 during the Proposition 187 era. We were so sick to our stomach. Does anybody remember the Proposition 187 time? It was a sickening time. There was so much hate and racism, and the reason that I am passionate about pushing back against anti-immigration rhetoric is because the stuff is dangerous, because it deputizes people to feel that they're already lean anti-immigrant or racist or bigoted. They feel empowered by that stuff, and we can't have these people be empowered by this kind of language. Up in Northern California during the Proposition 187 era, which was California Governor Pete Wilson's law that he actually rode to victory to re-election, was that undocumented immigrants could not use public services. And we're still, all these laws of Arizona and La Momia, Jan Brewer, and all these people are still, these are all retreads, or these are spawn. These are, hate roaches that have spawned from the original Prop 187 law. All the laws in Georgia, Alabama, Chris Kobach, the Attorney General of Kansas, you remember in I don't know it's a Public Enemy song, but where it says the KKK wears a three-piece suit, something like that, right? That's Chris Kobach. This is the guy now. He's like good-looking, and he's like a Christian, and with a Christian with the KKK in front of it, right? And he's in Kansas, and he's God-fearing. And he is a lawyer that is trying to stop any brown people from having roots in the U.S. And he would have us all kicked out. And this guy is the epitome of the KKK in a three-piece suit. This guy has actual power, to do this stuff. And this is why we got to push back on these people. But anyway, so up in Northern California, people were the craziest example was a clerk at a pizza joint. Was taking order from a Mexicano, was ordering a pizza, and he demanded from that Mexicano to see his ID, right? So he could order a pepperoni pizza. It's probably going to kill him anyway, right? And this is how ridiculous it was, and people felt empowered, like, oh, they don't even care if you're from Mexico or not, or they just saw a brown person and. I mean, I feel ridiculous retelling this because we all know about Arizona. It's replayed in Arizona. It's replayed in Alabama. It's replayed in Georgia. And so even though it replays, we still got to try to push the stop button on this stuff. But anyway, so we were so sick of hearing all this and really feeling. I remember, feeling like I had ulcers, from just having to hear all this racist talk. That we created this group called because Pete Wilson, the governor, had a group of his Latino support group, which was made up of 3 members. It was called Latinos for Wilson, and 2 of them were Cuban attorneys, okay? And so we said, well, we can create a better group than that that's even more conservative and more down, and we can, blow these guys out of the water with satire. And so we created Hispanics for Wilson. And we send out press releases. The internet used to be AOL, right? That was like the internet before, and a couple other pages. So we sent out faxes, press releases, and emails, and and the Telemundo station in Salinas wrote us back and said, we would like to interview Hispanics for Wilson, and especially their leader, Daniel Deportado. I said, oh my God, really? I can still remember the phone call, going like, I'm thinking in my mind, like, you're kidding, right? You believe this crap? Right? And we were calling for self-deportation, the creation of self-deportation centers where you could show up and you'll be whisked on a magical green bus back to the border. We had a press release for a 5K border fun run, right? When you just had to supply your shoe size, and we'd give you a free pair of sneakers, as long as you understood that it was a one-way run. Right? and we just kept saying, the whole when you hoax. As a tip for you potential hoaxers out there, is sometimes the more ridiculous you make it, is the better, because A, people will believe anything, and people will believe ridiculous things. Look at the GOP. And 2, once they fall for it hook, line, and sinker, it's so much more satisfying when it's revealed to be fake, and they sit around going, well, I can't believe we fell for that. So, yeah, because you're an idiot, right? So we never heard back from Telemundo in Salinas, but National Telemundo called us, and they invited us to be on a show called The Sev Sex Show. This show aired in 22 countries, and I said, what are we going to do? And my friend Esteban said, well, we're going to go on TV, stupid. And I go, okay, I guess I'm Daniel Deportado. So we bought segunda suits, and we dressed like that, like the Beastie Boys video Sabotage, right? That's how we dressed up, like narcs from the 70s, right? And so we show up in Glendale, or I think it was in Glendale, a TV studio, and we go on this internationally broadcast thing. It was taped, but it was a live remote with Miami, right? So the hilarious part is all the experts, all the pro-immigrant people from LA, including professors from UCLA that we knew, and political activists, and all kinds of people that are in the state assembly now, they were all in Miami in that studio for some reason, way over there. So we weren't in the same room. We were in the Glendale studio with a bunch of high school students that had gotten expelled or suspended for protesting 187 for doing a walkout, and their pissed off Mexicano parents, right? So they're all looking at us like, who are these guys? And we opened our mouths and we were like, we believe in Spanish. We believe in the self-deportation. We are willing to deport ourselves back to Mexico to support Pete Wilson and the Republican Party. And the people are like, pues váyanse! and then the kids were cool too, and we looked, evil. And I was snarling the whole time, and I was like, I demand the banning of Mexican food because it is a biological weapon. Also, I'm calling for the banning of the music of Linda Ronstadt because her garbled Spanish yodeling is attracting too many Mexicans to our country. And we want to deport the Chinos to Mexico. We don't care. As long as they're in Mexico, that's cool with us. It's just ridiculous stuff. And then like this little homie next to me, probably like an angry 10th grader, man. He leans over to me and goes, "Hey, you're a fucking sellout, eh?" and I'm like, I'm inside, I'm like, "Pa, cholo," you know. And he's like, "You're a sellout. Look at you with your little white suit, your little white tie, and all this stuff," right? And inside I'm going like, "I'm so proud of you, Bijo. I'm so proud of you." And so we did the whole interview, and we wrap it, and they had to escort us out with a couple producers because the people wanted to kill us and jump us in the studio, right? So we make it outside. The guy leaves us at the door. We run to the car, and we're laughing. We're like, "We can't believe we did this. Oh my God, man." And then here comes the producer running after us from the building, and he runs after us, and we have like, my friend's sister's car has no on Prop 187 sticker on the back of it, right? And we're like, "God damn it." Here comes the guy, and he goes, knocks on the window, he goes, "You guys forgot to sign your release." Like, "Oh." "All right, sure, yes, no problem, you know. I had the worst accent, you know, like, I don't even know where the hell the accent came from. And so the thing aired in 22 countries the Friday before the election, and of course Pete Wilson won with our support. And then one of the guys in the group, Lalo Medina, we're from Zacatecas. His family in Zacatecas wouldn't talk to him for 4 years because they saw the show and they thought he was like a sellout, anti-immigrant jerk working for Pete Wilson, right? Because Pete Wilson, by that point, was famous, you know, in Mexico and the U.S. So, and flash forward to 2012, and Mitt Romney says, you know, the GOP immigration policy is self-deportation, and then I jumped to credit for it, and within a couple days, the New York Times called me, interviewed me for a blog, and gave us credit for the self-deportation concept as, you know, a political concept. And then the next morning, the Rachel Maddow show got a hold of me, and then by that night I was on the Rachel Maddow show, and she did 11 minutes of setup, and for me to talk like 2.5 minutes on the air and just kind of shake my head and go like, "Rachel Maddow," you know. And but it was really cool because it all came full circle. But I think the circle's still spinning, man. We're still kind of going, you know, I don't want to say it's backwards. I just want to say it's spinning. And we don't have to get off, but we should try to at least get it spinning in a better direction than we have been. Or at least we got to die trying. I think that's the very least that we can do. So could you grab me those posters real fast? Of course, I'm shilling posters. I have some La Cucaracha books. And speaking of Pete Wilson, I brought the vintage stash. This is Pete Wilson, OG, offensive gringo. And he's tagging California. These are from the Vault, which is also known as my garage. This is not vintage, and this is a Roots Factory in San Diego did this for me. It's kind of my logo of me. It was actually my logo for 2012. That's why I have the penacho on the there. But that's what I look like most every night, drawing. And then this is Frayed anti-immigrant border spray. And these are all from they're around 1994. Speaking of roaches, there's the little roach spray. And you know the Christian name is Cuco Rocha. Great minds. And then Pete Wilson, and then finally Migra Mouse, which is my first big, well-known piece, And also, like, I mean, it really, people were reproducing it in parades and marches. There was a lot of marches going on, if you remember that time, and it was great because, I mean, it was kind of semi-pre-internet, and people now at least are nice, and they ask, can I tag your photo, or can I use it for this? And yeah, your cartoon. So, but it was great, and no, Disney will never ever come after me. So I'll set up somewhere, and thank you guys for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
Woo!
And listen to the Pocho Hour Power every Friday, 4 o'clock, KPFK.
All right, thank you all for coming out. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. We've got students from local